Putin on the sidelines of SCO. PM Modi thanks Putin for showing unity during difficult times. As the world witnesses Prime Minister Modi, President Putin's bonhomie at the SCO summit, Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif snubbed. Trump's advisor Peter Navarro continues his anti-India rhetoric, takes Brahmins' profiteering jibe at India. This even as the global south and east meet at Tianjin in China. Relief for Mumbaikars as the High Court intervenes in Maratha quota protest row, orders eviction of protesters blocking the streets in South Mumbai, limits protests only to Azad Maidan. BJP holds a Dharmasthala Chalo rally. Karnataka Chief Minister Siddaramaiah calls it hypocrisy and drama. Amid controversy over Election Commission's voter roll revision exercise, top court weighs in, orders setting up of paralegal volunteers. EC says claims and objections filed over voter roll revision will be considered even if they're filed after the September 30th deadline. Earthquake of magnitude 6 rocks Afghanistan, over 800 killed as quake jolts the eastern part of the country. Hundreds fear trapped under rubble. Prime Minister Modi condoles the loss of lives. Now, on the sidelines of the SCO summit, Prime Minister Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin held a bilateral meeting this morning, reaffirming the enduring strength and depth of India-Russia strategic relations. Both leaders emphasized the multidimensional nature of the partnership, which spans critical sectors such as defense, trade, technology, and most importantly, energy, where we're talking about Russian oil imports for India, something that seems to have irked President Donald Trump. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin described the ties between the two countries as principled and multifaceted, noting that over the years, the relationship has evolved into a robust framework for cooperation. Echoing those sentiments, Prime Minister Modi described his interactions with President Putin as memorable as always. He also reiterated India's constructive role within the SCO in combating terrorism and disrupting terror financing. In fact, Prime Minister Modi also did speak of the Ukraine conflict, going on to say that it is for humanity that we do find a solution in the near future, and a lasting one at that.
सिक्योरिटी के संदर्भ में मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि सुरक्षा, शांति और स्थिरता किसी भी देश के विकास का आधार है, किंतु इस मार्ग में आतंकवाद, अलगाववाद और अतिवाद बड़ी चुनौतियां हैं। आतंकवाद सिर्फ किसी देश की सुरक्षा ही नहीं, बल्कि पूरी मानवता के लिए एक साझा चुनौती है। एससीओ रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल-कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया। हमने रेडिकलाइजेशन के विरुद्ध समन्वय बढ़ाने और मिलकर कदम उठाने का भी प्रस्ताव रखा। भारत पिछले 4 दशकों से निर्मम आतंकवाद का दंश झेल रहा है। कितनी ही माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए और कितने बच्चे अनाथ हुए। ऐसे में प्रश्न उठना स्वाभाविक है, क्या कुछ देशों द्वारा आतंकवाद का खुलेआम समर्थन हमें स्वीकार्य हो सकता है? एक्सेलेंसी, हमें स्पष्ट रूप से और एक स्वर में कहना होगा कि आतंकवाद पर कोई भी डबल स्टैंडर्ड स्वीकार्य नहीं होंगे।
हम लगातार संपर्क में रहे हैं। दोनों पक्षों के बीच नियमित रूप से कई उच्च स्तरीय बैठकें भी हुई है। इस वर्ष दिसंबर में हमारी 23वीं समिट के लिए 140 करोड़ भारतीय उत्सुकतापूर्वक आपका इंतजार कर रहे हैं। एक्सेलेंसी, ये हमारे स्पेशल एंड प्रिविलेज स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप की गहराई और व्यापकता का परिचायक है। कठिन से कठिन परिस्थितियों में भी भारत और रूस हमेशा कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर चले हैं। हमारा करीबी सहयोग न केवल दोनों देशों के लोगों के लिए बल्कि वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और समृद्धि के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है। एक्सेलेंसी, यूक्रेन में चल रहे संघर्ष के विषय में हम लगातार चर्चा करते रहे हैं। हाल में किए गए शांति के सभी प्रयासों का हम स्वागत करते हैं। हम आशा करते हैं कि सभी पक्ष कंस्ट्रक्टिवली आगे बढ़ेंगे, संघर्ष को जल्द से जल्द खत्म करने और स्थायी शांति स्थापित करने का रास्ता खोजना होगा। ये पूरी मानवता की पुकार है। एक्सेलेंसी, एक बार फिर आपका मैं हृदय से बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूँ।
Сегодня хорошая возможность обсудить основные задачи дальнейшего развития многопланового двустороннего сотрудничества в различных областях. Уважаемый господин Прайм-министр, дорогой друг, Россия и Индия поддерживают десятилетиями особые отношения, дружеские, доверительные. Это фундамент для развития наших отношений в будущем.
आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी, प्रिय दोस्त, रूस और भारत के बीच बहुत विश्वसनीय रिश्ते बने हुए हैं। इस सिद्धांत पर वे विकसित हो रहे हैं।
И эти отношения носят абсолютно внепартийный характер, поддерживаются подавляющим большинством народов наших стран.
The Shanghai Cooperation Organization has emerged as a key platform for non-Western world. India is asserting its autonomy at this recent summit. CNN News 18's Rahul Shivshankar has been reporting from Tianjin, getting us all the latest. And even as the Prime Minister is now en route New Delhi, let's take a look at the highlights of what the Prime Minister's weekend looked like at SCO.
3 days ago, it was difficult to imagine that Tianjin would live up to its historical name. The meaning of the term Tianjin in Chinese means the heavenly crossing or a heavenly bridge. And it has certainly turned out to be one. The SCO has turned into a vehicle for multipolar, non-Western world to come together. And it was framed in one photograph with 3 leaders crammed into it, animatedly discussing their future and the future of the region. And those 3 leaders were, number 1, the Russian President Vladimir Putin, Prime Minister Modi, and President Xi Jinping. Before this, everyone was talking about the SCO as having become an irrelevant organization filled with contradictions. But that has changed. Of course, it is all optics, and all these leaders who have committed themselves to mutual cooperation and building trust will have to walk the talk. But in my notes, I also came across a couple of other points that I want to bring up. India has decided to use the SCO framework and its time in Tianjin to assert its own both diplomatic and economic autonomy, and fundamentally send out a message to the world that it is not going to be dictated by anyone, least of all Donald Trump in Washington. The third important element of what we witnessed in Tianjin, the Tianjin moment, so to speak, was the symbolism of trilateral solidarity amid this geopolitical flux. What this tells us really is that these 3 countries have decided that the global south that hasn't found representation in Western governed and obviously Western created framework need to find a place in the sun, and that they can be the bridge to those institutions which are ossifying, like the United Nations and of course the WTO and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, the past has shown that these 3 leaders have ended up sometimes undermining their own ambitious goals. Hopefully, the one thing that Tianjin will teach us is that while interests may not be permanent, opportunities could be. And these 3 countries can therefore seize the moment, provided in large quantity by the catalyst who sits in Washington, Donald Trump. It is their moment to seize. And let's hope the Tianjin spirit prevails.
The SCO summit and what transpired on the sidelines of it in Tianjin is high on optics, and it's a clear message to the world. But India has been vindicated, and this is what the Prime Minister's message at the SCO is really summed up as. As far as security is concerned, that's how the Prime Minister broke down. SCO stood for security, connectivity and opportunity. He spoke about how there cannot be double standards on terror. The Prime Minister spoke about terrorism as a shared challenge for humanity and that the whole world must unite in the fight against. The Prime Minister also spoke about the Pahalgam attack. He said how we saw how the heinous face of terrorism and in all its forms in Pahalgam when the attack took place on the 22nd of April. He said that we have to say clearly that there is no compromise on terror. During his remarks at the SCO, Prime Minister Modi spoke about open support to terror by some, and that's not acceptable. That was a clear message that was sent out to Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, who was also present in that summit. As far as the C component of the SCO is concerned, the Prime Minister said that stood for connectivity. He spoke about how connectivity was vital, but one that bypasses sovereignty loses trust. This was a jibe at China and its ambitious BRI project. The Prime Minister made it clear that India is working on the Chabahar port for connectivity and that working on these international north-south transport corridor was also important. He highlighted how these projects will boost links with Afghanistan and with Central Asia. As far as opportunities that the SCO would present, the Prime Minister made it clear that India has been following the mantra of perform, reform and transform. That's something that he said he invites the entire grouping to be a part of. This is India's development journey and that's something that the entire SCO grouping could partake in, is what the Prime Minister said during his remarks at the SCO. But what was most important was the statement on terrorism, and that's how India's stand was vindicated. As far as the SCO declaration is concerned, that strongly condemned the April 22nd Pahalgam terror attack. In fact, the grouping also called for combating cross-border movement of terrorists. The SCO also echoed India's line, India's stance as far as terror is concerned, that there is no good terror or bad terror and no double standard on terror should be appreciated or should be acceptable. In fact, the grouping also affirmed the determination of all member nations to continue their fight against terror and a united one at that. In fact, the SCO also condemned the use of terror groups for mercenary purposes. That's something that came out of that particular statement. And it was important because Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif was present when these remarks were being made. But for the Pakistani Prime Minister, this summit was just a show and evidence of how isolated Pakistan stands. A desperate handshake with Russian President Vladimir Putin is all he got. As the world witnessed today the camaraderie between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, the world also did see global embarrassment for Pakistan and its Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif because he was completely snubbed at that SCO summit. Most leaders, including Prime Minister Modi and the Russian President, just walked past him like he didn't exist at that summit.
What a momentous couple of days it's been, Rahul, because yesterday you had the bilateral, went on for an hour between India and China, and for the very first time in a joint statement at the end of that meeting, they referred to India and China as partners and not rivals. And today you have these pictures, first of the three leaders of India, China and Russia coming together, having a moment, handshakes and hugs and discussing something. And then now this photograph that we are splashing on our screen of Prime Minister Modi and President Putin in the same car traveling together to the venue of their bilateral meeting. Rahul.
Well, the optics are very promising. There has been a realignment really on the global high table of diplomacy, of international diplomacy. That's what one can take away from here. This photograph of the two of these leaders, and remember, this photograph is being circulated by the Indian government. The Prime Minister himself, from his own handle, Zaka, has tweeted photographs of himself with President Putin and, of course, President Xi. And this photograph, just look at it, just look at the details of it. This is, we're told, Putin's own car, which sort of travels with him all over the world. It's bulletproof. So in a sense, it's a metaphor for bulletproofing their relationship from Trump's tyranny. This is a message to Trump. On a day when one of Trump's key aides on the trade issue, Peter Navarro, has gone completely doolally. There's no other way of saying it. in a conception that he has borrowed straight from the worksheet of those that want to drive a wedge in Indian society. Peter Navarro has picked a leaf and used caste, the original fault line in our country, to try and divide the people. This is direct interference in the internal affairs, domestic policies of our country. And whether the MEA reacts or not, it tells you that there is now pretty much an unstated war been brought about by President Trump and his team, and I'm sure President Trump is on this, to New Delhi and to the east. And the global south countries are sending a message from here. And if you saw that framing, the three lead poles of this part of the world, the principals standing together, exchanging pleasantries, at least sending out a message that, okay, we've got differences. We realize that we've got areas that we need to finesse. But the point is that we are looking at permanent opportunities, not just the past. So fundamentally, we are coming together. We're going to set aside our differences because each one of them in their own ways, in their speeches, if you've noticed, has talked about external interference in their trade outlook and their fiscal, financial, economic and strategic autonomy. All three have touched upon that.
All right.
In fact, the Prime Minister has even related the exposition of trade ties to, of course, peace and stability. So very, very clearly, Zaka, this is a message that is coming out of Tianjin. Tianjin has become the epicenter of this, I wouldn't call it still a reset, but certainly a shift in the momentum of global geopolitics today, and that Western framework that has been constructed with America as the lead pole of what America feels is a unipolarity is being tested by the BRICS coming together in this very, very optical power play.
And it's certainly, you know, if anyone has to blame himself for it, it is Donald Trump. It is his unjustified, unreasonable oil tariffs that's pushing India to the corner of China and Russia. I want to go across to Palki Sharma, Managing Editor, First Post, who's also joining us live from Tianjin. Diplomacy, you know, there's obviously what is said in the joint statements, Palki. There's what is said in passing through the texts of these joint statements. But pictures speak 1,000 words. Maybe it's optics, but the fact is that these pictures, of Prime Minister Modi, President Xi Jinping, President Putin earlier this morning, and now Prime Minister Modi and President Putin in the same car traveling to the venue of their bilateral summit. Just what do you make of this? Is it just optics, or is it somewhere down the line a significant, if not realignment, a certain reset of how global, alliances and partnerships are going to work going forward?
Well, it is optics for sure, Zaka, and very powerful optics. But optics are used as an important tool in diplomacy, as a way to send a message. I mean, you could not have, you did not see these smiles and handshakes between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping, say, 2 years back. So optics do send a message. Yes, I think all sides are cognizant of the fact that officials in Washington, in the White House, will be watching the pictures coming out of Tianjin today, which is why I think they're all like Rahul said, posting these pictures from their official handles to tell the world that this is a convergence of leaders who are trying to build an alternative to the Western-led order. So optics for sure, but optics with a message, and optics not without substance. Because if you look at the joint statement, you see that each side has sort of safeguarded their position, at the same time shown the intent to work together, whether it's the BRI, where India is focusing on the north-south corridor, the Chinese are talking about the BRI and how that is a good alternative at a time when the Americans are scaling back their engagement, or terrorism, a big win for India there. I'm sure you've discussed this, that Pahalgam has been mentioned in the joint statement and signed by all leaders. So India has been able to reaffirm its position. India has been able to keep its interests intact here, at the same time shown a willingness to work with others. And that is a message for sure for Washington.
I want to get one more question to both of you before we go to our guests, and I'll start with Palki. Yes, this is a significant sort of signaling, no doubt about it. It could be optics, it could be more than optics. Like you said, in diplomacy, optics count for a lot. I know people who've made careers reading body languages of leaders, but the point is, that how is this going to be viewed in Washington? How is this going to be viewed in London, in Paris, in Berlin, at a time when willy-nilly the onus of peace in Ukraine, the onus of trying to end that war and move it in a direction of peace, India too has been made a party to it by Trump and his oil tariffs. Palki.
I think Washington should see this as a moment to reflect on its actions, on how what was meant to bring them leverage, the tariffs and the sanctions, has sort of backfired with all of these countries coming together. India would not have probably gone this far. If you look at the joint statement, Zaka, India has joined others to condemn Israel and the US and their strikes on Iran, and that is not the kind of language that India would have probably used in the past. It has said that we need to look at the Palestinian cause and we need to look at the Iranians. But words do matter again. So I think India has also shown its displeasure very clearly, very subtly, and sometimes not so subtly. And Washington would be watching this. We are seeing the frustration in the statements of Peter Navarro, which are plunging into absurdity now, talking about the caste issue in India and so on and so forth. So that shows that they've not been able to sort of read the room well, and now the frustration is building up. I wonder how Donald Trump is going to respond to this, whether we'll see posts on Truth Social. He has been very vocal in his opposition to the BRI, saying he's going to punish all those countries, but he's not really said much about the SCO. Maybe he does not know enough about this group, or he does not see it as a threat yet. But after looking at the pictures that have come out of Tianjin this weekend and the statements of the leaders, I'm sure there'll be a reaction from Washington, and hopefully it will trigger some sort of an introspection on what they're trying to do, how they treat their partners and rivals, and how it is not serving their interests.
Now, carrying on this rhetoric that the White House trade advisor has been on against India, Peter Navarro has once again sharply criticized New Delhi while defending President Donald Trump's 50% tariffs on Indian goods. Calling New Delhi nothing but a laundromat for the Kremlin once again, Peter Navarro has now accused Brahmins of profiteering at the expense of the Indian people. That must be stopped, he said. He questioned why India continues trading with Russia and China despite being the biggest democracy in the world. In fact, the White House special advisor also went on to preach to India last week, where he said, if you are the biggest democracy, then act like one. Meanwhile, there seems to be some damage control or face saving that is being done within the Trump administration. US Embassy in India put out a social media post with a positive message amid these ongoing negotiations that we are seeing and the tariff war that is ensuing between the two countries. That particular post emphasized the growing partnership between the two countries. This is what it read, that the partnership between the United States and India continues to reach new heights, and it is a defining relationship of the 21st century. Well, if you listen to Peter Navarro, that clearly doesn't seem to be the tone of the Trump administration. The post also then highlighted remarks made by US Secretary of State Marco Rubio that outlined the tremendous potential of economic relationship between the two countries. Akanksha, my colleague, now joins us, getting us more perspective on this. Akanksha, this kind of anti-India tirade that Peter Navarro seems to be going on, there seems to be some sort of unease within the Trump administration, which is why we're perhaps seeing this kind of damage control coming to the fore from the US Embassy here.
Absolutely, because Poonam, let's not forget that most of this kind of anti-India rhetoric that is coming out of the White House is primarily by the trade administrators under Donald Trump, whether it is Peter Navarro, Scott Bessent, or even Kevin Hassett. They are the ones who are making these anti-India remarks, with Peter Navarro being at the forefront of it by calling India Kremlin's laundromat, or the conflict in Ukraine as Modi's war, or India funding Putin's war chest. Something that perhaps is a divided view, and that's why the whitewashing is now being done by the likes of the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who, as we all know, is at the helm of affairs of the U.S. State Department. So that already is an indication that what Navarro has said is perhaps not the wider view of the West. And that's also something that several analysts have highlighted, that even Donald Trump's view of what India is doing, or perhaps the reasoning that or the rationale that he's giving for slapping the highest U.S. tariff on India, is not a view that is being endorsed by a majority of the Republicans, whether it is Marco Rubio or even J.D. Vance. Remember, that's also threatening how the Republicans are going to face the consequences or larger political ramifications of this when, whether it is Marco Rubio or J.D. Vance, they are pitching themselves as the future of the Grand Old Party. But having said that, it's also arrived, that statement coming from the US Embassy has arrived on a day, minutes before the very significant bilateral was to take place between the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Indian Prime Minister. Much of it has already been indicated through the kind of bonhomie that we witnessed at the SCO, and with many in the US administration perhaps wanting to be a fly on the wall in that car ride, especially that took place between Prime Minister Modi accompanied by the Russian President.
Right, Akanksha, thank you so much for getting us that perspective. It'll be interesting to see how Washington and how the White House reacts to what has transpired at the SCO and at Tianjin on the sidelines of the SCO summit. We'll keep a track of that and much more here on Nation at 5. But for now, a quick break.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
हमारे शानदार स्वागत और आतिथ्य सत्कार के लिए मैं राष्ट्रपति श्री का हार्दिक आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। आज उज्बेकिस्तान का इंडिपेंडेंस डे है। कल किर्गिस्तान का राष्ट्रीय दिवस था। इस अवसर पर मैं दोनों लीडर्स को बधाई और शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। एक्सेलेंसी, पिछले 24 वर्षों में एससीओ का पूरे यूरेशिया क्षेत्र की एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली को जोड़ने में बहुत महत्वपूर्ण योगदान रहा। भारत ने एक सक्रिय सदस्य के रूप में हमेशा कंस्ट्रक्टिव और सकारात्मक भूमिका निभाई है। एससीओ को लेकर भारत की सोच और नीति 3 मुख्य स्तंभों पर आधारित है। SCO, S सिक्योरिटी, C कनेक्टिविटी, O अपॉर्चुनिटी। पहले स्तंभ S यानी सिक्योरिटी के संदर्भ में मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि सुरक्षा, शांति और स्थिरता किसी भी देश के विकास का आधार है। किंतु इस मार्ग में आतंकवाद, अलगाववाद और अतिवाद बड़ी चुनौतियां हैं। आतंकवाद सिर्फ किसी देश की सुरक्षा ही नहीं बल्कि पूरी मानवता के लिए एक साझा चुनौती है। कोई देश, कोई समाज, कोई नागरिक अपने आप को इससे सुरक्षित नहीं समझ सकता। इसलिए आतंकवाद से लड़ाई में भारत ने एकजुटता पर बल दिया। इसमें एससीओ रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल-कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया। हमने रेडिकलाइजेशन के विरुद्ध समन्वय बढ़ाने और मिलकर कदम उठाने का भी प्रस्ताव रखा। टेरर फाइनेंसिंग के खिलाफ आवाज उठाई। इसमें मिले समर्थन के लिए मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। एक्सेलेंसी, भारत पिछले 4 दशकों से निर्मम आतंकवाद का दंश झेल रहा है। कितनी ही माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए और कितने बच्चे अनाथ हो गए। हाल ही में हमने
Welcome back. You're watching Nation at 5 and we have some breaking news that's now coming in. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has now expressed condolences on the deadly earthquake in Afghanistan. Hundreds of people, in fact, have been killed. Several others are still believed to be trapped under rubble. At last count, the death toll was at about 800. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has now taken to social media where he says, and I quote, spoke with Afghan Foreign Minister and conveyed that India has delivered 1,000 family tents today in Kabul. 15 tons of food material is also being immediately moved by the Indian mission. Further relief material will be sent from India starting tomorrow, is a confirmation that's come to the fore. External Affairs Minister there confirming the assistance that has been extended by India in Afghanistan's time of need, even as we see that death toll only rise. Akanksha joins us, getting us more details. Akanksha, this is a follow-up to what the Prime Minister had said. He had taken to social media a short while ago, expressing his condolences to the families of those who've lost their loved ones. He had also directed the External Affairs Minister to ensure that this assistance is granted and is done at a speedy level with Afghanistan. That's something that S. Jaishankar has now confirmed?
Absolutely. In fact, Poonam, there is a statement coming out of the Taliban Foreign Ministry which is indicating that the Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar had a word with the Foreign Affairs Minister of Afghanistan, Mr. Amir Muttaqi, and during that phone call, there was much assistance offered by India to Afghanistan, and that included supplying 1,000 tents and 15 tons of food supplies, which has already been done. The Indian Prime Minister, as you rightly highlighted, has already expressed his condolences over the disaster and pledged support for those who have been affected. Remember, this happens on a day. This catastrophe has in fact hit when the SCO summit has concluded, in which it's also connectivity happens to be a crucial aspect of the SCO, and so perhaps we can expect more member nations to step forward to jump to Afghanistan's rescue. But as far as India is concerned, it's time and again being known the kind of aid and supply that we have provided Afghanistan. We have a long history of assisting Afghanistan through humanitarian aid, even economic development, especially when it comes to whatever calamities that have plagued Afghanistan, but particularly support for the institutions. And after Taliban's fall in 2001 as well, India had pledged support. And even though Afghanistan is awaiting an official sort of acknowledgement of the Taliban regime, there India continues to engage with the Taliban regime. And in the latest, what we can tell you is the kind of aid and support India has pledged. As we highlighted, 1,000 tents already being supplied, with 15 tons of food aid also being offered. This is a massive catastrophe because remember, the death tolls already crossing 800. Several have been injured. And the announcements also come from Dr. Jaishankar, who's taken to X to, in fact, make that announcement that he's had that word with Taliban's Foreign Minister Amir Muttaqi and conveyed India's condolences as well.
Right. Thank you so much, Akanksha, for getting us the latest. Shifting focus now to some news coming in from the national capital here. The outgoing Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar has now vacated his official VP residence. We're given to understand that he is going to be moving out. This comes a little over a week before the next president will be elected and then sworn. The next vice president will be elected and then sworn in. Those elections are slated for the 9th of this month. Pallavi, my colleague, now joins us, getting us more details. Pallavi, the outgoing vice president there, moving out of his official residence, has a new residence been allotted to him?
See, for now, the new residence is still being kind of finalized and renovated. So there's going to be a makeshift residence which earlier belongs to Mr. Chautala. But these pictures, I think, Poonam, are the first time we are seeing ever since he hurriedly resigned of the former Vice President of India, Jagdeep Dhankar, leaving his One Church Lane residence, which has been the official residence of the Vice President. You know, there has been much politics which has been done over it, with the opposition parties, particularly the Congress party, accusing the government and confronting it and asking where is the outside outgoing Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar what was the real reason on why he hurriedly resigned. And they've also accused the government of demeaning the stature and the office of the VP. Remember, the Home Minister recently in an interview made it very, very clear that there is no such thing. There were health reasons, and relations between the government and the outgoing VP are not wrong at all. And this is needless politics which is being played out by the Congress party. Now, as per the rules, a 1 month's time is given for any vice president, for former vice president, to leave the official residence, because by which time, by 9th, we are going to get a clarity on who's going to be the next vice president of India. Going by the numbers, C.P. Radhakrishnan certainly is likely to become, and almost certain, Poonam, to become the next vice president of India, and he's going to shift into the official residence. But the outgoing VP is being given a makeshift home for now, because the final home is not yet ready. But yes, these are the first pictures which should calm down those accusations on what the opposition calls the missing former vice president of India.
And speaking of that vice presidential election that we are going to be seeing on the 9th of September, that's when the voting will take place. The results will be out by later that evening as well. As far as the number game goes, Pallavi, it's like you said, stacked up well in the NDA's favour.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think even the India bloc is aware of the fact, that they don't have the numbers, and they've said it on record that it's about ideology. It's not about winning, and that's the reason why they have put up Mr. Reddy as a counter candidate. It's just about not just the entire NDA, but even those who are not with the NDA, parties like the BRS, parties like YSR, Jagan Mohan Reddy's party, the BJD, all of them have expressed their wish to support the NDA's official candidate. So therefore, in terms of sheer numbers, nothing to worry about. It's going to be an almost clean sweep. And by 9th of September, when the voting is going to take place, it's going to be an official announcement of who's going to be the next Vice President of India.
Right. Pallavi, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that front. More news now coming in. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has inspected the Tavi Bridge at Bikram Chowk, Shiva Temple and the houses that were damaged by the recent floods in Jammu. He has taken to social media to confirm that he was in Jammu today and that he inspected all of these places and the damage that was caused to it by the floods that we saw last week. The Modi government stands firmly with the affected people, he says. He also went on to say that the centre and the central government will be making all efforts to help those who are still in need, and that coordination efforts between the centre and the state government continue. Remember, several people were left dead in that trail of destruction where flash floods and cloudbursts were reported from several parts of Jammu and Kashmir, including in Jammu last week. The Vaishno Devi Yatra was also temporarily suspended because several of the devotees that were en route to the Vaishno Devi shrine were hit by this cloudburst. Several of them lost their lives. Several were caught in the midst of it under the rubble for several hours before they were rescued. Tajinder, my colleague, now joins us, getting us more details on this. Tajinder, the Union Home Minister was on ground today inspecting the trail of destruction that's been left behind. All assistance has been confirmed from the centre side, as was affirmed by the Prime Minister earlier as well.
The Union Home Minister Amit Shah held an extensive tour of the areas which were which saw the destruction in the last couple of days due to the floods. He went to the Manguchak, which is close to the international border. This place has seen lot of destruction because of the floods that wreaked havoc across Jammu region. The Union Home Minister, he held several review meetings. He went to the Tavi side where he went to Bikram Chowk. He saw the damage which Tavi river has caused in the adjoining areas. So he has passed instructions to the authorities in Jammu, telling them that every possible help should reach to the people who have been badly affected by the recent floods in Jammu region. He went. The Home Minister also held a review meeting along with the Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha, the Chief Minister Omar Abdullah, besides several senior officers from the UT administration and police and other agencies, including the SDRF, NDRF. They were also present in the meeting, wherein the Home Minister got the detailed view of the amount of destruction these recent floods have caused and how the relief and rescue work was carried out, not only in Jammu region but also in Kishtwar, wherein 70 people lost their lives. Also in Katra, where more than 30 people lost their life when a landslide hit the Ardh-Kuwari area. So now the Union Home Minister has assured the people of Jammu and Kashmir that every possible relief, every possible help would be extended to the people of Jammu and Kashmir, because the Modi government stands firmly with the affected people and will make all efforts to help them. This was also revealed by the Home Minister during the meeting with the local residents. You see, the important thing is that while he went to take the first-hand view of the destruction caused by the floods, he interacted with the local people, the real victims. He took the ground assessment while interacting with the local residents who lost their livelihood, who lost their houses due to this flood, and assured them every possible help would be extended not only by the UT government but also by the central government. Yes, Poonam.
Right. Tejinder, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that front. On that note, it is time for a quick break on this edition of Nation at 5, but news and updates continue on CNN News 18. Don't go anywhere.
Brought to you by This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
हमारे शानदार स्वागत और आतिथ्य सत्कार के लिए मैं राष्ट्रपति श्री का हार्दिक आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। आज उज्बेकिस्तान का इंडिपेंडेंस डे है। कल किर्गिस्तान का राष्ट्रीय दिवस था। इस अवसर पर मैं दोनों लीडर्स को बधाई और शुभकामनाएं देता हूं। एक्सीलेंसी, पिछले 24 वर्षों में SCO का पूरे यूरेशिया क्षेत्र की एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली को जोड़ने में बहुत महत्वपूर्ण योगदान रहा। भारत ने एक सक्रिय सदस्य के रूप में हमेशा कंस्ट्रक्टिव और सकारात्मक भूमिका निभाई है। SCO को लेकर भारत की सोच और नीति 3 मुख्य स्तंभों पर आधारित है। SCO, S सिक्योरिटी, C कनेक्टिविटी, O अपॉर्चुनिटी। पहले स्तंभ S यानी सिक्योरिटी के संदर्भ में मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि सुरक्षा, शांति और स्थिरता किसी भी देश के विकास का आधार है। किंतु इस मार्ग में आतंकवाद, अलगाववाद और अतिवाद बड़ी चुनौतियां हैं। आतंकवाद सिर्फ किसी देश की सुरक्षा ही नहीं बल्कि पूरी मानवता के लिए एक साझा चुनौती है। कोई देश, कोई समाज, कोई नागरिक अपने आप को इससे सुरक्षित नहीं समझ सकता। इसलिए आतंकवाद से लड़ाई में भारत ने एकजुटता पर बल दिया। इसमें SCO रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल-कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया। हमने रेडिकलाइजेशन के विरुद्ध समन्वय बढ़ाने और मिलकर कदम उठाने का भी प्रस्ताव रखा। टेरर फाइनेंसिंग के खिलाफ आवाज उठाई। इसमें मेरे समर्थन के लिए मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। एक्सेलेंसी, भारत पिछले 4 दशकों से निर्मम आतंकवाद का दंश झेल रहा है। कितनी ही माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए और कितने बच्चे अनाथ हुए। हाल ही में हमने पहलगाम में टेररिज्म का बहुत ही घिनौना रूप देखा। इस दुख की घड़ी में जो मित्र देश हमारे साथ खड़े रहे, मैं उनका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। यह हमला केवल भारत की अंतरात्मा पर ही आघात नहीं था, यह मानवता में विश्वास रखने वाले हर देश, हर व्यक्ति को खुली चुनौती।
Thank you so much for staying with us. The Dharmasthala Chalo rally that has been announced by the BJP that's underway in the temple town in Karnataka, it's a full-blown political war. Karnataka BJP held this rally demanding an NIA probe into what they called a conspiracy to malign Hindu faith and the temple there. The Congress, the ruling government, however, has accused the BJP of politicizing the issue. Karnataka Chief Minister, in fact, hit back at the BJP, saying Hindutva cannot be misused for politics, stressing that he too is a Hindu and that misinformation and lies should not be spread based on faith. The BJP has hit back at the Karnataka government, stating that the rally was to expose the Congress government, who continues to target Hindu beliefs.
The BJP taking out a massive Dharmasthala Chalo rally here in Dharmasthala, seeking a NIA probe into the conspiracy against the Dharmasthala temple and a smear campaign that they believe has been planned just to tarnish the image of Dharmasthala. The BJP is saying that there should be an immediate arrest of the conspirators, not just that, the case should be handed over to the NIA for an impartial probe. The state government, in the meanwhile, maintains that right now the SIT is carrying out a probe. There is no necessity for a NIA probe because the SIT is doing a fair job, and the state government will wait for the SIT probe report to come. In the meanwhile, you have the Congress hitting out at the BJP, saying this is an attempt to politicize the issue, that it should be ideally left to the SIT to investigate. Not just that, in fact, you have Priyanka who's come out and said that at least two people who are now seen as conspirators in this case are linked to the BJP and the RSS. They were former BJP and RSS members. This is, in fact, RSS versus RSS that's playing out.
ನಾನು ಮೊದಲೇ ಹೇಳಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಬಿಜೆಪಿಯವರು ಅವ್ರು ಏನು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಹಿಂದುತ್ವ ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗ್ತದೆ, ಹಿಂದೂಗಳಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಒಟ್ಟಾಗ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಾನು ಐ ಆಮ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಹಿಂದೂ, ಗೊತ್ತಾಯ್ತಾ? ಈಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಹಿಂದೂ. ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಊರಿನಲ್ಲಿ ರಾಮ ಮಂದಿರ ಮಾಡಿಲ್ವಾ? ಸಿ ಹಿಂದೂಗಳು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ರಾಜಕೀಯ ಮಾಡೋದಲ್ಲ, ಅಪಪ್ರಚಾರ ಮಾಡೋದಲ್ಲ, ಸುಳ್ಳು ಹೇಳೋದಲ್ಲ. ಮನುಷ್ಯತ್ವ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಯಾವನೇ ಆದರೂ ಕೂಡ ಮನುಷ್ಯತ್ವ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಮನುಷ್ಯತ್ವ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಹೋದರೆ.
In Dharmasthala also, the motto was to reduce the shraddha of the public at large and make a divide, make a division in the Hindu society and politically make use of it. Without understanding the background, without a basic inquiry about that person who brought this skull, how can you, without inquiring him, can you bring any dead body which is already buried, bring it out, or some part of it, can you bring it out? Magistrate permission needs to be taken. Without that they have done. इसका अर्थ यह है कि they wanted to defame Dharmasthala.
We already welcome the SIT investigation, but the scandal going Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Delhi, Pakistan, that's why we are demanding NAI, National Investigations Agency, that have to investigate this issue. This is they are targeting Hindu, the toolkit of condemning Hindu culture. Who is the toolkit? which fund is coming to India from international community, which country is sponsoring this all toolkits. This have to come out. That's why the Congress people in Karnataka, they are supporting the toolkits. That's why we are protesting today.
मंजूनाथ धर्मस्थल क्षेत्र का ऊपर कुछ लोग गलत अंजाम लगाया था। आज 1 बजे को बहुत बड़ा प्रोसेशन में जाके हमारा धर्मस्थल में एक बहुत समावेश करने के लिए डिसाइड किया था। अभी सुबह आने के लिए बहुत हजारों लोग आने के लिए चालू किए। मेरा ख्याल से 1 लाख का ऊपर लोग इधर जमा हो जाएगा।
Breaking news now coming in from Rajasthan, where the state government is set to introduce a more stringent version of a bill to curb religious conversions that are carried out through coercion, misrepresentation or fraudulent means. This legislation is expected to be brought in the assembly during this ongoing session. In fact, the proposed legislation includes tough penalties for offenders with imprisonment ranging from 7 to 14 years. भवानी, my colleague, now joins us, getting us more details on this. भवानी, ये नया बिल जो लाना चाह रही है राजस्थान की सरकार, इसके पीछे क्या intentions है? Given that religious conversion is already punishable under law, why is it that एक नया कानून लाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं स्टेट गवर्नमेंट?
देखिए, एक तो बिल को लेकर प्रोसेस शुरू हो गया है, कैबिनेट ने मंजूरी दे दी है और जो बिल के अंदर प्रोविजन है उसमें से 3 बड़े प्रोविजन है, जिसके अंदर एक तो ये है कि अगर जो धर्म परिवर्तन है, जो जबरन धर्म परिवर्तन बार बार कराया जाता है, तो उसके अंदर 50 लाख तक की पेनल्टी और आजीवन कारावास की सजा दी गई। ये अभी तक की शायद देश में शायद सबसे बड़ी जो प्रोविजन है कड़ी सजा का। दूसरा इसके अंदर ये किया गया जिसके अंदर ये कहा गया कि अगर किसी जगह पर पर्टिकुलर प्लेस पे अगर जबरन धर्म परिवर्तन किया जाता है तो उस बिल्डिंग को डेमोलिश किया दिया जाएगा, उसको उस पर बुलडोजर चला दिया जाएगा। ये भी शायद पहली बार ऐसा हो रहा। तो कई ऐसे कड़े प्रावधान किए गए। अब लाया इसकी जा रहा, हालांकि पिछली बार इससे पहले असेंबली के सेशन में भी एक बिल पेश किया गया था, उसको वापस ले रहे हैं। ये संशोधित बिल है। इससे पहले राजस्थान में वसुंधरा राजा का जब टेन्योर था बीजेपी के अंदर, जब वसुंधरा जी की अगुवाई में, तब एक बिल इसी तरीके पेश किया गया, लेकिन वो फिर उसके बाद में राष्ट्रपति के पास में पेंडिंग था क्योंकि उसको मंजूरी मिली नहीं, राष्ट्रपति ने मंजूरी नहीं दी, इसलिए वो कानून की शक्ल नहीं ले पाया। तो राजस्थान में काफी टाइम से ये कोशिश हो रही है। कुछ स्टेट्स में अलग अलग तरीके से जो बिल है इसको लेकर एंटी कन्वर्जन बिल, तो इसी फॉर्मेट पे, लेकिन राजस्थान का जो बिल है वो बाकी स्टेट्स के अंदर कुछ जगहों पर अलग अलग बिल हैं, उससे भी काफी इसके अंदर जो सजा के प्रोविजन है वो काफी हार्ड है। तो अब क्योंकि जब टेबल किया जाएगा, अभी टेबल करने की डेट डिसाइड नहीं हुई, लेकिन क्योंकि इसी असेंबली सेशन के अंदर पेश किया जाएगा तब पूरी तस्वीर साफ होगी इसको लेकर। जी
भवानी, धन्यवाद हमसे बात करने के लिए and for getting us those details on this new legislation that the Rajasthan government aims to bring in. Shifting focus now to Maharashtra. The Bombay High Court has cracked the whip on the Manoj Jarange Patil-led protest that is currently underway in Azad Maidan in Mumbai. The Bombay High Court has come down heavily on his supporters and the state government for protests that have violated all conditions. The High Court said that the entire city was brought to a standstill and vital places in South Mumbai were surrounded by protesters. There was no permission that was granted for this indefinite strike to Manoj Jarange Patil, and which is why the state government has now been given a deadline of 3 p.m. tomorrow, before which all of these protesters have to be evicted by the state government. In fact, the permission is only for 5,000 people to gather at Azad Maidan, and that's where this protest should be restricted to, is a clear message that the Bombay High Court has sent out.
Shobha, we just heard your comments. If you could share your personal experience of the way these protests are now panning out in the maximum city.
First of all, let's congratulate the High Court, and it was much needed and will provide enormous relief to all the Mumbaikars who were paralyzed. They couldn't get to their workspaces. Out. You don't bring in truckloads of people, some of whom didn't look like actors at all. They looked more like just hired people who were there coming for a
trip to Mumbai or a sightseeing trip, I can understand that the fascination of coming to a big city, but they're not being briefed. They've not been in any way guided by their bosses that you cannot come and defecate all over the city, leave uncleared garbage, bathe in public spaces, ruin promenade like Marine Drive. They were swarming all over the place, getting pretty aggressive.
Also, Shobha, take a
drivers,
moment to weigh in on the
drivers.
timing of this, given that we've already seen how torrential rainfall has lashed out at the city of Mumbai. Not to forget that the Ganpati festival has been on. Is this now making the overall situation on ground level even worse?
It's not just the rains. It's also that it's right bang in the middle of Mumbai's favorite, most popular, most loved festival, Ganpati.
Yes, I just mentioned
where all our police forces as well as our municipal workers, they work 3 shifts a day to make sure that the festival itself goes off without any kind of an incident. If you add to that the timing of this protest seems definitely manipulated, have some sort of an impact. So it's definitely a very sensitive political issue, and I'm not undermining his demands. I'm not saying they're not legitimate. I'm talking about the way to protest and demand, press for your demands. This is not the way. You cannot issue ultimatums to the state government and say, I'd rather get shot than leave the protest. These kind of what we call dhamkis in Mumbai can only backfire.
So you've seen the big arc lights here, the flashy cameras, but beyond all of this, journalism is all about hard work. So if you have it in you to make a name for yourself in this hyper-competitive industry, then let CNN News 18 be your platform.
CNN News 18 Primetime Studio, presented by Schneider Electric Smart Home Solutions.
Very good evening. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Akanksha Swaroop, and we are coming live to you from the CNN News 18 Primetime Studio, presented by Schneider Electric Smart Home Solutions. It was 2 months ago that India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh left China's Qingdao without signing the joint declaration. The reason? The omission of the Pahalgam terror attack at the Defence Ministers' meeting. But today, the tide has turned. In a major diplomatic victory for New Delhi, the SCO joint declaration at the leaders' meeting has condemned the Pahalgam terror attack. In fact, the SCO has not just expressed their deepest condolences to the families of the victims and injured, they have also emphasized that the perpetrators, organizers and sponsors of terror attacks must be brought to justice. Interestingly, the Trump administration in Washington has been keenly tracking Prime Minister Modi's movement from Tokyo all the way to Tianjin. Some, like White House trade advisor Peter Navarro, have even vented their frustration. This by accusing India's Brahmins, perhaps a veiled reference to India's elite, of profiting from the war in Ukraine and getting in bed with authoritarians like Russia and China. But that was marked by a sharp U-turn. This is the US Embassy in India jumped into damage control mode.